A cultural powerhouse and a relatively windy city has had a pretty mediocre basketball team for the past 6 to 7 years. They had stars, they lost talent, they retooled incorrectly, and John Paxson had control over the team for the better part of a decade. As this is another major city with the letter C in its name, the Chicago Bulls are our second of 3 letter C's that we're going to include in this. As we look into the future, Coach Billy Donovan and company look to have a very promising future. And that brings me to our coaching segment. Coach of the Chicago Bulls is Billy Donovan. Oh, I got this new mic, by the way. No more holding a lavalier in my hand. Billy Donovan is a coach that I like. He's one of the other coaches in this league that's gone from the college to the NBA route. He seems like he's a very seasoned individual in terms of basketball. I was reading up on his bios before making this video, and I saw that he used to work on Wall Street, which seems very on brand from the way he looks. But he runs his team kind of in a modern way. With all the college experience that he has, I feel as though when he coaches a team, it seems that they play a very, very fast-paced, breathing style where he manages to make every single player effective and then shoots whatever player into the ground as much as possible. He really knows how to make a talented point guard. I will say that. Now the question is, will he make this new roster fit together? And I have a few questions about that myself because I don't know how this team is going to work going into the future. I had to think about what I'm going to do for the predictions later in this video, and it's going to be really hard to come up with that. But all I know is that Billy Donovan is a great person to have at the helm of this organization. They did a great job by hiring him a few years back because who did they have beforehand? I don't know. They went through a few coaches before Billy Donovan was landed there. I think it was Jim Boylan or something like that beforehand. And that was, I remember just a crazy era of just like, what is going on here? But the signing of Zach LaVine proved to be an actual good one. There was a lot of question marks about him, about his injury, about how he can play, if he can play as a team player. I think Zach LaVine really proved this past year that he can hold the team a little bit. And with Billy's support, it seems like they're actually a promising duo. I remember in this past Olympics, Zach LaVine was seen in a video with Kevin Durant, who knows Billy Donovan personally, and they were talking about defense. Kevin Durant was kind of joking around with him, being like, I'm going to tell Billy Donovan that you're going to have to play defense. And Zach LaVine looked at him and was like, no, please don't do that. And even though Katie was joking, just to have that reaction shows that there's somebody that's strong in charge, someone who has control over the team. And now that they have a little bit more veteran leadership, it's going to be a very unique scenario. What's unique about coaches sometimes is that when you acquire talent from the draft, you kind of have questions about if they're going to pan out or not. And with Billy Donovan, I feel as though there's no question that talent will develop under him. For some reason, he has like a player whisperer attribute to him where he just knows how to excel individuals. So that leads me to talk about Patrick Williams, a person who has a lot of potential in this league. And if he can make it big on this team, if he can make a splash in terms of his play and being consistent day in and day out, I think that they can be a really, really promising team. It may be overhyping Patrick Williams at the end of the day, but I feel like this is like the missing piece. This is your hidden gem amongst them, although he could end up being a little bit more of a bust. Let's just say what we saw last season out of him was really good and really exciting, especially his stretches towards the end of the season when Laurie was obviously injured most of the time. Vucevic was not really doing that great. LaVine was kind of injured for part of the season, and it really caused him to step up. With veteran leadership last year, that was Thad Young. It was great for a player like him to develop under an unselfish big like Thad Young. Thad Young is now on the Spurs, and they acquired DeMar DeRozan out of it. A player that I'm somewhat critical of, but it's still an exciting acquisition for this team, as they really haven't had that many exciting free agency moves in the past 5-6 years. I mean, Zach LaVine, we can argue, was a great free agency signing, but when you look at the other ones, you're just like, what's going on here? So DeMar DeRozan and Lonzo Ball have come in this offseason, and that's going to be a unique sort of offense that Billy Donovan has to figure out. Do I think that Billy Donovan will not be able to figure out how to run this offense? No, I think that he'll take this offense running, but it's going to be hard to manage these types of players because of spacing, because of how each individual plays. Just talking about the starting lineup, I mean, the prospective starting lineup, we have Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, probably DeMar DeRozan in that 3 position, Patrick Williams, then Vucevic. I mean, in this day and age, it seems like it would be a cool roster building type thing, Like if you had an NBA My GM, you'd be like, this is a dope-ass team. But in terms of realistic play, it could end up not being that great as the floor isn't really spaced. There's inconsistency with Zach LaVine's spot-up shooting. There's a lot of questions that won't be answered until we see them play and until we see how the players have developed this offseason. Because we have young players on this team, young, hungry players. Although Lonzo Ball has maintained and grown his three-point shooting, I don't know how effective he'll be as that leading man, because he seems like he's going to be the leader of this team. I'll accept arguments for that, but I think that a point guard who has as much control as Lonzo Ball is going to be the leader of this team. He's going to run the offense. Billy Donovan definitely has some whispering to do with him. There's no question that Lonzo Ball can make plays, but we're talking about an entire playbook. Will Lonzo Ball be able to carry the team on his back in terms of the total control over offense? And he's going to decide who gets the shots at the end of the day. I mean, obviously he can't play all 48 minutes, but still, it's going to be mostly him passing the ball to people. And in terms of defense, I don't know what they're really going to do about it, because it seems like they have only 2 or 3 people on their rotation who are going to be consistent defenders for 48 minutes. And that's not a fault on any of the players, but it is the joke of Kevin Durant to say that you're going to have to start playing defense, Zach. I think Zach is definitely capable of being a very good defender. Don't get me wrong. He's athletic, he's quick, and he knows how to guard people. Everybody has seen flashes of it in the past, but can you get these players to buy into the system? With a lot of these coaches, it's just getting players to buy into the system. And it's proven that in this day and age, it's going to be really hard for these players with such big personalities to buy into a system completely. But I think a lot of these players are pretty selfless and pretty willing to learn from each other. I just hope and pray that this team finds its cohesion and chemistry going forward. That brings me to the players to watch. Transition into the players to watch. I would say I'm not going to put Patrick Williams in this segment. I'm just going to stay away from him because that's the talking point that everybody's going to use. Oh, is Patrick Williams developing? Yes, he is. And if he's not, I'm going to be really surprised. I would put a lot of my NBA tokens on him actually turning out to be pretty good. But we're going to talk about this year, talking about DeMar DeRozan, first player to watch. Now, this is obvious. We have a player who is a proven NBA player. He's played in Toronto. He's played in San Antonio. He's played in systems. He's a very amazing, philanthropic person, and he loves repping his city, LA. I saw a video of him recently at a LA Chargers versus Chicago Bears game, and people were very happy to see him, but he was also wearing the LA jersey in Chicago. I mean, you can't get much more LA than that. He loves his community, and Kobe has acknowledged that in the past. I love DeMar DeRozan. But enough about him as a person. Let's talk about him as a player. He's gotten better at three-point shooting. He's been more consistent this past year, especially because the San Antonio Spurs love to figure out how to maximize your abilities. I think that that's what Billy Donovan probably has to do this year. When you maximize DeMar DeRozan, he's pretty successful in the role. As a 32-year-old, DeMar DeRozan is going to have to prove that he can play with these young kids. Now, I won't deny that he'll develop the talent on the team, but can he play those minutes? Can he be consistent day in and day out? With such exciting players like Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine, it's so rejuvenating to see DeMar DeRozan actually really excited to get started with this team, because it seemed as though with the Spurs teams, although he was committed to being with them, it was a difficult time for him to be in a rebuilding mode. I'm saying the Chicago team has high ambitions, and if they don't make the playoffs this year, that's going to be a tough conversation for DeMar DeRozan to have. But hey, the Chicago Bulls had to get somebody. For some reason, the Chicago just became a small market team overnight, and all of their acquisitions have to be the hard way. So DeMar, I hope you do good this season. And I know you're a great guy, but let's see how this pans out. And your teammate, Lonzo Ball, is a dynamic player who's improved every single year he's been in this league. I remember when he got drafted to the Lakers, he had that triple-double, and it was all exciting and stuff like that. But the big thing was that he didn't have a jump shot. And last year, for the Pelicans, he proved he has a jump shot. So is he going to bring all of those talents here and buy into this system? As I mentioned earlier, Billy Donovan's going to have his work cut out for him as the point guard whisperer to improve this team. And ensuring that Lonzo Ball is running the offense adequately is his biggest task going into this year. The reason why you watch Lonzo Ball is because of the things that he does and doesn't do. It's funny because him and Brandon Ingram were on the same team, and they're the quietest, best players to play on the court. Like, Lonzo Ball can drop 20 points and you won't even notice. And weirdly, my last player to watch is Tony Bradley. Now, Tony Bradley was signed at the early stages of free agency, and I think he's actually going to turn out to be pretty good for this team. I mean, if they don't trade him midway through the season, which I wouldn't be so crazy surprised if they did, then I think it's going to prove that he's going to be a backup defender. I think it's going to be a lineups game for this team. I think that there's going to be their defensive lineups and there's going to be their offensive lineups. It's pretty classical in that regard, that you're going to have to think about this team, about who's going to be on the court to do what at what time. Because Tony Bradley is an effective defender, and he's a big body, a big rebounder, and he kind of makes up for the weaknesses that Vucevic has. Now, that's not saying that they could both play on the court at the same time, but I think that if Tony Bradley is playing backup for Vucevic, it's going to be really, really good for the team. I think that's the biggest thing with Vucevic, is that he makes up from his bad defense with his scoring, but let's say he's not scoring, it's going to be really bad for the team because he's a defensive liability most of the time. I mean, he has flashy moments of good defense, Vucevic. Vucevic has flashy moments of good defense, but overall, you'd probably give him like a D or a C- in terms of defense. Whereas Tony Bradley has the potential to be a B, B+ type player on defense. I should start giving letter grades for my player to watch. But how do we give letter grades if they haven't even played yet? Regardless, I think Tony Bradley is going to be a good player for this team. Tony Bradley has like a 7'5" wingspan. And if that person can defend, I don't know who can. So this year, they're going to have to look at making all of their pieces be most effective whenever they're playing. That means Lonzo Ball is coming in, trying to push the basket, score the ball, shoot his threes, and they're trying to play in and out constantly. Hopefully, they maximize Tony Bradley's minutes in order to make him a valuable asset for this team. Because if I'm wrong about him being the player to watch, then I'm just going to laugh at myself every single time I watch one of their games. But I think they're going to use him well because Billy Donovan's a good guy. And that brings me to our predictions. I got to be honest, and I say that every single time I do the predictions, but I got to be honest. I don't have that high of hopes for teams. If they can make it above 500, I think that's a really successful season. If they make it over 500, like by a lot, I'm going to be so surprised. I think this team is going to make the playoffs in the East, but they're poised to be a first-round exit against whatever team that's better than them. The only way that I could see them doing a lot better as a team is if one of the players has this crazy breakout season, whether that be Vucevic or Patrick Williams or Lonzo Ball or Zach LaVine. I mean, if they break out a lot, if they play really, really, really good, like out of their minds good, the best I could see is like 48 wins. And that may be pushing it in my eyes. Hopefully Kobe White comes back. Hopefully their talent continues to thrive. But it should be said always, the Chicago Bulls have a bright future. And